Funding for this video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you.
With over 1,000 monsters to choose from in D&D, it can be hard to know which ones to use, and even harder to know how to play them. What weapons do they favor? What tactics would they use? How do they interact with other types of monsters? These are all questions that can come up to DMs that are looking to make their combats more enticing for their players. It's certainly one that I struggled with. That's why I'm back today with another monster breakdown for D&D. Hello again everyone, I'm Bill from Altroll, and today I'm going to dive into a brief history of a D&D creature, how that history was adapted into 5th edition, and how this lore can help game masters make their combat encounters better. So, whether you're here for the cool lore breakdown, or for the combat tactics, I'm hoping to give you a lot more to chew on when it comes to the monsters we face in D&D. For episode 26, let's look at an avian animal that hunts horses and hippogriffs. The Griffon. The Griffon is a legendary creature with the body, tail, and back legs of a lion, and the head, wings, and front talons of an eagle. Thought to have originated as a fusing between the King of the Beasts and the King of the Skies, the Griffon was revered among ancient civilizations as a powerful and majestic creature. The mythology of the Griffon can be traced as far back as ancient Mesopotamia, depicted on cylinder seals as early as the Uruk period between 4000 and 3100 BC. The Griffon's lore continued to be expanded upon in the classical and medieval eras, associating them as divine creatures that worked for various deities such as Apollo, Dionysus, and Nemesis. Many collectors in those times claimed to have aspects of the Griffon like feathers or eggs, which were held and traded as valuable objects. Many of these items were later identified to be forgeries, or attributed to other rare animals, such as the fabled griffin eggs of some collectors simply being ostrich eggs. In literature, griffins were widely used as plot devices. In Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy of Purgatorio, after Dante and Virgil's journey through hell and purgatory has concluded, Dante meets a chariot dragged by a griffin in earthly paradise, which leads him and Beatrice through paradise. Their common presence in mythology continued into modern culture, where the griffin still frequently appears in fantasy series such as Warhammer, the Dragon's Dogma series, Harry Potter, and of course, Dungeons & Dragons. Introduced in the earliest edition of the game, Griffons made their first appearance in the Dungeons & Dragons White Box set of 1974, where they were described as being the most prized of steeds and were fond of horseflesh. The AD&D First Edition Monster Manual, released in 1977, expanded on this lore, establishing that griffins were aggressive carnivores that built their nests on rocky cliffs. They hunted in groups of up to 12, searching within 20 miles of their lair for horses and herd animals. Their superior vision and sense of smell allowed them to spot prey up to 2 miles away. If that prey was a horse, or horse-related, such as the hippogriff was, the griffins would use their great size and weight to swoop down from above, attacking their foe with talons before landing nearby. Like lions, it was stated that griffins lived in prides, consisting of several mated pairs, their young, and one dominant male. The alpha would be responsible for settling territorial disputes with other prides, as well as choosing which direction the pack hunts in. Each mated pair would have their own nests, located near enough to the rest of the pride, but still relatively on their own. During the spring, female griffins would lay 1 or 2 eggs that hatched in late summer. These hatchlings grow rapidly, taking only 3 years until they're large enough to hunt with the pride. Griffins continued to be featured in subsequent editions of D&D, appearing in 2nd edition's Monstrous Compendium Volume 2 in 1989, 3rd edition's Monster Manual in 2000, and 4th edition's Monster Manual in 2008. There were also other printings that expanded on the Griffon, such as Dragon No. 161, released in September of 1990, that had an article examining the ecology of the Griffon. In 2003, 3rd edition's Savage Species, a book on playing monstrous characters, presented the Griffon as both a race and playable class as well, though that was not carried over into later editions of the game. Other than minor lore tweaks, 4th edition also included the Rhymefire Griffon, a level 20 sapient elemental griffon. In 5th edition, Griffons are described as ferocious avian carnivores with the muscular bodies of lions and the head, forelegs, and wings of eagles. They build their nests on rocky cliffs, using sticks, leaves, and bones from their prey. Once a nest is established, Griffons hunt in the nearby area until the food supply is exhausted. Flying near their cliffside nests, Griffons hunt in small prides, searching for herd animals, horses, or hippogriffs, which they crave most of all. Upon spotting one, a griffon will loudly screech to alert its pride mates, then descend quickly towards their new prey. Those riding or herding horses will largely be ignored by the griffon, unless they make the fatal mistake of trying to defend their animals. Should that happen, the griffon will unleash its full fury on the rider or herder. Outside of hunting, griffons are aggressive and territorial around their nests, and will attack any creature that gets too close. Flying foes will have their wings ripped to shreds, and ground-based foes will be grabbed and eaten while climbing, or knocked off a ledge to tumble to their deaths. Much like the hippogriffs we discussed last week, griffons that are raised from an egg can be trained to serve as an exotic mount. Unlike hippogriffs, the training is time-consuming, expensive, and very dangerous for the trainer. Once trained, a griffon is fierce and loyal, bonding to one master for life, and willing to die to protect them. Even when tamed, they still crave horseflesh, and smart riders know to keep their griffon well fed while passing through civilized lands. Now that we've examined their lore, let's pivot over to the griffon's stat block. The griffon is a large monstrosity, about the same size as a lion, though their wingspan may make them appear larger. Mechanically, they take up 10 feet on a battle map, and being a monstrosity, they're generally viewed as monsters with no specific category or race to speak of. We'll get into their mental scores later, but griffons don't maintain the capacity for rational thought, acting similar to wild beasts. As such, their alignment is unaligned, lacking any sense of morals or ethics. Their stats make them faster and tankier than hippogriffs while airborne, with an armor class of 12, 7d10 plus 21 hit points for an average of 59, and a basic movement speed of 30 feet, but an extremely fast flying speed of 80 feet. Griffons generally have high strength, dexterity, constitution, and wisdom, with strength being their highest, and low intelligence and charisma. Creatures with intelligence lower than 4 are considered bestial in nature, and don't really have the capacity for things like morals, ethics, or critical thinking skills. As a CR2 monster, they have a basic proficiency bonus of +2, but they do get a +5 bonus to perception checks and dark vision out to 60 feet. This helps them spot enemies while prowling the night skies, keeping an eye out for herds of horses or hippogriffs. This bonus is doubled by their Keen Sight ability, which grants advantage on perception checks relying on sight. In combat, they make 2 attacks per turn, a beak attack and a claw attack. These melee attacks each have a +6 to hit, but the beak does 1d8 +4 piercing damage, and the claws do 2d6 +4 slashing damage. Lastly, we have their environment tags. Generally speaking, griffons are found in Arctic, coastal, grassland, hill, and mountain biomes. Now that we've gone through and sorted out their stat block, let's examine how the Griffon behaves in combat. To do this, we're going to take their lore and stat block and combine that with presumptions about monster behavior from Keith Amon's The Monsters Know What They're Doing. The first of Amon's assumptions is that most creatures want to survive, and if seriously wounded, will try to flee combat, though there can be some exceptions. If we assume seriously wounded to be 1/3 of the creature's health, that threshold for the Griffon would be rounded to 20. Beasts generally attack while hunting for food, and while there can be exceptions where they're trained as mounts, defending their nest, or enraged in a fight, wild griffons will generally not keep attacking a meal if it starts seriously wounding them. Therefore, if reduced to 20 hit points or fewer, a griffon will try to disengage from combat, using its high flight speed to get away. Next up, we look at their alignment. As bestial monstrosities, alignment doesn't really come into play with their decision-making. Like all beasts, they'll be territorial around their nest or young, but unless they're being directed by some other creature, they'll only fight if pressed to, and when they do, they're going to aim to kill. With alignment sorted, let's look at their mental ability scores in greater detail. Griffons have an intelligence score of 2. With regards to intelligence scores of 7 or less, Amon states that the creature operates off instinct alone, and can't really adjust their tactics on the fly. For Griffons, this just means that they'll generally act like beasts, swooping down on their prey from the skies with claws and beak ready. They're tough enough to be willing to take a fight straight up too, landing near a target before running into melee. On top of that, Griffons also have a wisdom score of 13. With regards to wisdom scores of 12 or 13, Amon states that these creatures choose their targets carefully, and may even refrain from combat if it seems unwinnable. Despite their instinctual combat style, Griffons are very good at picking out targets in combat, focusing more on horses or herd animals rather than their riders. They only swap to other creatures if those creatures get in between the Griffon and its potential meal, meaning a clever rider or herdsman can abandon their horse to escape with their life. With their mindset sorted, let's look at their physical stats that influence how they fight. Griffons have a +2 in dexterity, a +3 in constitution, and a +4 in strength. On top of that, all of their attack actions are melee strikes as well. Combine that with their extreme flying speed of 80 feet, relatively low armor class, but moderately good hit point pool, and the Griffon appears to be a tough flying predator that has high mobility, but also enough tankiness to stay in melee once it engages in combat. As stated in their lore, Griffons are also clever enough to use the environment to their advantage while fighting, dropping enemies off cliffs or swooping in and out of melee range to whittle down tougher opponents. The last major premise from Amon is that any creature gets their movement, action, bonus action, and reaction. Any creature that exists in D&D will have evolved in accordance with this rule, and will combine their movement, actions, bonus actions, and reactions to maximize their action economy. While the Griffon doesn't get any innate bonus actions or special features, we can still try to min-max their abilities to make them as effective as possible in combat. Depending on where they're being fought, Griffons excel in the air, preferring to use their 80 feet of flying speed over their 30 feet of regular movement. Unlike the Hippogriff, being forced to stay on the ground puts the Griffon at a disadvantage mobility-wise, as its large size and basic 30 feet speed means it would need to use the dash action if it had to escape on foot. Once in melee, their best damage option is to use their multi-attack, dealing around 19 damage on average with their claws and beak. They can also drag enemies into the sky with a grapple, making it up to 40 feet before dropping them to deal 4d6 damage. Unless the combat arena is full of hills, cliffs, or steep terrain, however, Griffons will generally refrain from this, as their multi-attack is going to do more damage on average. After using their attack action, the Griffon can afford to stay in melee due to its larger health pool, but retreating to the skies is always an option as well. As essentially a tougher hippogriff, the Griffon's higher attack bonus, damage, and hit points means that DMs can be a bit more flexible in how they use them. They can do flyby attacks, skirmishing with targets before escaping out of melee range, or they can land and get into a melee brawl, ferociously attacking both their prey and anyone defending them. On subsequent turns, Griffons will either continue flying in and out of melee with skirmish attacks, or end their turn in melee, hoping to kill the enemy before the enemy kills them. Due to their low intelligence, they'll keep this up until either their prey is defeated, or until they get seriously wounded, at which point they'll disengage and use their flying speed to fly away from combat. With their action economy examined, let's finish up this section by looking at how they work when fighting in a group. As stated in their lore, wild griffons hunt in prides, with groups able to encounter anywhere from 1 to 12 griffons at a time. This means that DMs can tailor the amount of griffons in their encounter to better fit the level that the party is at, with 12 griffons still being a medium combat encounter for a party of 4 level 15s. When encountered in groups, their nature as unintelligent monstrosities means they wouldn't really act any differently though. While they may split their focus on separate targets, they'll use the same strategies as they would if fighting alone. If encountered as a mount for humanoid opponents, however, Griffons will follow their master's commands. As stated in their lore, they are loyal when trained properly, and will defend their masters to the death. So, with all of that laid out and applied to Griffons, what do we now know about how to use them in our encounters? First, Griffons are flying carnivores that hunt herd animals, preferring horses above all others. This causes them to be dangerous threats to packs of roaming hippogriffs, as well as any travelers that happen to use horses. Second, making their nests in cliffside caves, Griffons roam the immediate area in prides of up to 12, moving as family units led by a singular alpha. They normally only kill for food, but if humanoids try to get between a griffon and their fresh meal, they will become enraged, killing and eating anyone who gets in the way. Third, in combat, Griffons are flexible combatants, able to skirmish from the skies before landing and engaging in an all-out brawl. If the environment allows for it, they may choose to grab enemies off the ground and drop them from great heights, letting fall damage do their dirty work, but only if it would end up doing more damage than their multi-attack. Fourth, if reduced to 20 hit points or fewer, a Griffon will begin to flee combat, disengaging with their high fly speed. When defending their nest, young, or a rider, however, they will fight to the bitter end. Fifth, if Griffons win a combat encounter, they're just as likely to leave them be as they are to eat them before flying back to their nest. With Griffons only really caring about their next meal, it's really up to the DM whether the party's actions angered the Griffon enough to warrant it fully killing them. With that, we come to the end of today's video on the Griffon. A classic monstrosity both in D&D and mythology, the Griffon is a really flexible monster that DMs can use in a variety of ways. Whether as a monster, a mount, or just a natural hazard of the world, Griffons can inspire awe and fear in many an adventuring party. However, what I want to know is, what do you think of the Griffon? Do you like using these eagle-lion hybrids, or are these just beefed up versions of the hippogriff? You can let me know down in the comments, or you can discuss it on the Alt-Roll Discord using the link in the description. If you want to support Alt-Roll, you can visit our Ko-fi link in the description to leave a one-time or recurring donation. And make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to be notified when our videos go live. However, That's all I had for you. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to have a great rest of your day, and I'll see all of you next time.